In the vast expanse of the Galactic Federation's premier educational institution, Xenobiology 101 was typically a dry affair. But today, things were about to get interesting. Professor Zorblax's tentacles waved in a complex pattern, signaling the end of his lecture on the mating habits of the Zorgon dung beetle. The classroom, filled with an assortment of alien life forms that would make any Earth zoo jealous, collectively breathed a sigh of relief. Well, those with respiratory systems did, anyway. Any questions Zorblax asked, his purple skin glowing dully with what passed for enthusiasm among his species. The room was silent. A Glorpian in the front row had fallen asleep, its gelatinous body slowly oozing onto the floor. Centauri was busy grooming its antennae, and a group of hive-mind beastoids in the back were playing the alien equivalent of tic-tac-toe, using their psychic abilities. Suddenly, a voice from the back of the room shattered the silence. "Yeah, I've got one. When are we going to learn something fun?" All eyes, stalks, and sensing organs turned to look. There, lounging in her chair with her feet up on the desk, was Jenny Smith, the only human in the class. She was grinning like she'd just told the best joke in the universe. Professor Zorblax's skin turned a dark purple, a sign of annoyance in his species. "MS. Smith," he said in a voice that sounded like gravel in a blender. "What could possibly be more fascinating than the reproductive cycle of the Zorgon dung beetle?" Jenny's grin got even bigger. "Oh, I don't know. How about pets?" The classroom erupted in confused alien noises. It sounded like a mix between a malfunctioning starship engine and a cosmic zoo at feeding time. "Pets? What are pets?" asked a blob-like student named Gloopy. His question came out as a series of bubbles that popped, releasing the words. "I'm glad you asked, Gloopy, my man." Jenny jumped up and strode to the front of the class, her combat boots making a satisfying thunk with each step. "Professor, mind if I take over for a bit?" Before Zorblax could protest, Jenny was already writing on the holoboard. In big, glowing letters, she wrote Pets 101. "All right, class," Jenny said, turning to face the bewildered alien students. "Today we're going to learn about one of the best things humans ever invented, pets." A student with 7 eyes blinked, all of them in confusion. "Humans? Invented animals?" it asked in a voice that sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. Jenny laughed. No, Blinky. We didn't invent animals. We just decided to make them our best friends." The class looked even more confused. A quantumite student in the corner started to flicker in and out of existence, unsure whether to be in this reality or one where things made sense. "Okay, let me explain," Jenny said, hopping up to sit on the professor's desk. Zorblax's tentacles twitched in annoyance, but he remained silent. On Earth, humans started living with animals thousands of years ago. We realized some animals were cute, helpful, or both. So we were like, "Hey, want to crash at our place forever?" And the animals were like, "Sure, as long as you feed us and rub our bellies." The plant-like student raised a leafy hand. "But..." Wyatt's voice rustled like leaves in the wind. Jenny's eyes lit up. "Oh man, where do I start? Pets are amazing. They're like having a best friend who never argues with you, always listens to your problems, and thinks you're the greatest thing in the universe just because you know how to open a can." The class stared at her blankly. The Avoid Walker in the back actually opened a small black hole to check if this made sense in another dimension. It didn't. "Tough crowd," Jenny muttered. "Okay, let me show you." She pulled out her holopad and projected a giant image of a golden retriever. "This is a dog. They're one of the most popular pets on Earth." The alien students gasped, some in awe, some in terror. Gloopy actually split into 2 smaller Gloopies in shock before managing to pull himself together. "Is it dangerous?" asked a jelly-like alien, quivering slightly. The vibrations of its voice made the air shimmer. Jenny chuckled. "Nah, unless you count being dangerously adorable. Look at that face. Who's a good boy?" "You are. Yes, you are." She was baby talking to the hologram, much to the alien's confusion. The hive-mind beastoids in the back actually disconnected from their collective consciousness for a moment, unable to process what they were seeing. "MS. Smith," Professor Zorblax interrupted, his tentacles twitching in annoyance. Is there a point to this exhibition? Of course, Prof. I'm teaching these fine folks about one of humanity's greatest achievements, convincing other species to love us unconditionally. A rock-like student rumbled, but how is this an achievement? Its voice sounded like gravel in a washing machine. Jenny grinned. I'm so glad you asked, Rocky. You see, pets aren't just cute fuzzballs that live in our houses. They're our companions, our friends, and sometimes they're even heroes. She swiped to a new image, showing a service dog helping a blind person. Check this out, we've trained dogs to help people who can't see. They guide them around, help them avoid obstacles, even bring them things they need. The class murmured in amazement. The Quantumite student actually stayed in one reality for more than 5 seconds, too intrigued to shift. And that's not all, Jenny continued, swiping through more images. We've got cats that comfort people in hospitals, horses that help with physical therapy, and parrots that can talk and keep lonely people company. A student with antenna raised them questioningly. These animals, they do jobs. Its voice crackled like static electricity. Some of them. Yeah, Jenny nodded enthusiastically. But most pets just have one job, being our friends and making us happy. Professor Zorblax's skin was turning an interesting shade of puce. MS Smith, while this is all very quaint, I fail to see how it relates to our xenobiology curriculum. Jenny spun to face him, her eyes sparkling with mischief. But Prof, don't you see? This is the ultimate xenobiology experiment. Humans have managed to form deep, meaningful bonds with species that can't even talk to us. If that's not relevant to a class about alien life, I don't know what is. The professor's tentacles drooped in defeat. Very well. Continue your presentation. Jenny beamed. Thanks, Prof. You're the best. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, let me tell you about the time my cat outsmarted a burglar. For the next hour, Jenny regaled the class with tales of pets doing amazing, hilarious, and sometimes bizarre things. She told them about viral cat videos, about dogs who could surf, and about the great hamster escape of 2085, which nearly caused an interplanetary incident. So there I was, Jenny said, gesturing wildly, trying to explain to the Andromedan ambassador why there were suddenly 1,000 hamsters loose in the embassy. And let me tell you, trying to catch a hamster in 0G is not easy. The alien students were captivated. They laughed at the story of Mr. Whiskers, the cat who became mayor of a small town. His campaign slogan was more naps, less crap. Turns out, a lot of voters related to that. They gasped at the tale of Buddy, the dog who saved his family from a fire. He barked until everyone woke up, then led them to safety, even went back in to save the family goldfish. And they were utterly baffled by the concept of dog shows. You mean humans make the animals compete in beauty pageants? Asked Blinky, all 7 of his eyes wide with disbelief. Kind of, Jenny replied. But it's not just about looks. They judge things like obedience, agility, and how well the dogs conform to their breed standards. And the dogs. Enjoy this? Gloopy bubbled skeptically. Jenny shrugged. Most of them seem to. They get lots of treats and attention. Plus, have you ever seen a corgi run? It's hilarious. As Jenny's stories went on, even Professor Zorblax found himself drawn in. His tentacles, which had been twitching with annoyance, were now waving in what could almost be described as amusement. And then there was the great parrot debate of 2090, Jenny was saying, barely containing her laughter. This guy taught his parrot to argue about politics. The parrot ended up running for office. The class erupted in alien giggles, chirps, and burbles. The void walker in the back actually closed its black hole, too engrossed in the story to maintain it. Did the parrot win? Asked Gloopy, his blob-like form jiggling with excitement. Jenny grinned. He came in third, actually. Ran on a platform of more crackers for everyone. Turns out, a lot of people agreed with him. As the laughter died down, a timid voice spoke up. It was Xylith, a shy plant-like student whose leaves always seemed to be drooping. Miss Jenny, do you think? Could aliens have pets too? The classroom fell silent, all eyes and other sensory organs turning to Jenny. She smiled softly. You know what, Xylith? I think that's a fantastic idea. In fact, I bet aliens could be amazing pet owners. Really, Xylith's leaves perked up, actually reaching towards the light for the first time since the semester started. Absolutely, Jenny nodded enthusiastically. Think about it, you all have unique abilities that could make you incredible pet parents. Gloopy over there could shapeshift to give the perfect cuddles. Blinky with his 7 eyes would never lose sight of a wandering puppy. And you, Xylith, you could grow the freshest catnip in the galaxy. The aliens started chattering excitedly among themselves, discussing what kind of pets they might like to have. I could levitate toys for a kitten, exclaimed a psychic alien, accidentally lifting several desks in its excitement. My multiple arms would be great for petting many dogs at once, mused a squid-like student, its tentacles waving enthusiastically. Even Professor Zorblack seemed to be considering the possibility, his tentacles curling thoughtfully. Jenny clapped her hands to get everyone's attention. All right, settle down, class. Before you all run off to the nearest pet store, there's something very important you need to understand about having a pet. The room fell silent again, all attention on Jenny. Even the Quantumite students solidified fully into this reality, sensing the importance of the moment. Having a pet is a big responsibility, she said, her tone serious for the first time since she started her impromptu lesson. Our pets aren't toys or accessories. They're living beings with needs and feelings. When you take a pet into your home, you're making a commitment to care for them, to love them, and to be their family. She looked around the room, meeting the gaze of each student. It's not always easy. Pets can be messy, they can be noisy, and sometimes they might chew up your favorite pair of anti-gravity boots. A few students chuckled at this. The Glorpian in the front row, who had finally woken up, looked horrified at the thought of something chewing on technology. But Jenny continued, her voice soft, the love and joy they bring to your life. It's worth every challenge. When you've had a tough day and you come home to a wagging tail or a happy purr, there's nothing else like it in the universe. The classroom was silent, each student and even Professor Zorblax absorbed in thought. The hive mind beastoids were so moved that they accidentally linked up with the classroom's computer system, causing the lights to flicker in time with their emotions. Finally, Gloopy spoke up. "Ms. Jenny, how do we know if we're ready for a pet?" Jenny smiled. "That's a great question, Gloopy. And the fact that you're asking it shows you're on the right track. Being ready for a pet means being prepared to provide food, water, and shelter. Please give them attention and affection. Take care of their health needs. Exercise them and play with them. Train them and keep them safe. Commit to them for their whole life. It's a big job, but if you're willing to do all that, then you might just be ready for a pet." "What if our species has a lifespan of several thousand years?" asked the rock-like student, its gravelly voice tinged with concern. Jenny paused. "Huh. Good point, Rocky. I guess in that case you'd need to be prepared to care for many generations of pets, or maybe look into some of Earth's longer-lived species, like tortoises. They can live over 100 years. This led to a whole new round of questions. The aliens wanted to know about every kind of pet imaginable, from goldfish to guinea pigs, from iguanas to Irish wolfhounds. "Wait," said Blinky, all 7 eyes blinking in confusion. "You're telling me some humans keep wolves as pets?" Jenny laughed. No. Irish wolfhounds are a dog breed. They're big, but they're domesticated. Actually, let me tell you about how humans domesticated wolves in the first place. It's a pretty cool story." And so Jenny launched into an explanation of how ancient humans and wolves formed a mutually beneficial relationship, eventually leading to the hundreds of dog breeds we have today. The aliens were fascinated. The idea that a species could change so much over time, guided by another species, was mind-boggling to them. "So humans shaped these animals?" asked Xylith, leaves quivering. "In a way, yeah," Jenny nodded. "But it was a two-way street. Some scientists think that our relationship with dogs played a big role in human evolution too. We learned to work together, to communicate across species lines. It made us better hunters, better survivors." She paused, her expression thoughtful. "But you know what I think it did that was even more important? I think it taught us to look beyond ourselves, to form connections with beings that are different from us. And in a galaxy as diverse as ours, that's a pretty handy skill to have, don't you think? The classroom fell silent as the implications of this sank in. It was Gloopy who finally broke the silence, his voice bubbling with excitement. So you're saying that your relationships with these animals prepared your species for interstellar contact, for dealing with beings as different from you as, well, as we are? Jenny nodded, a slow smile spreading across her face. Got it in one, Gloopy. I mean, don't get me wrong, we still freaked out plenty when we made first contact. But I like to think that having centuries of practice in loving beings that don't look or think exactly like us, well, it helped. Mrs. Professor Zorblax, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. His gelatinous form quivered with a mixture of irritation and reluctant fascination. Ms. Smith, while your unconventional lecture has been undeniably engaging, I fail to see how this relates to our curriculum. This class is meant to cover advanced xenobiology, not, whatever this is. Jenny turned to face the professor, her eyes glinting with mischief. But Prof, isn't this the most advanced xenobiology of all? I mean, we're not just talking about understanding alien life forms, we're talking about forming deep, meaningful connections with them. Isn't that what science is all about in the end? Not just observing, but engaging. The professor's skin rippled in what Jenny had come to recognize as the Zagonian equivalent of a deep sigh. I suppose you have a point, Ms. Smith, though I shudder to think what the dean will say when he hears about this unorthodox lesson. Oh, come on, Prof. Jenny cajoled. Think of it as a cultural exchange. We've spent months learning about the mating habits of the Zorgon and the digestive processes of the gastropodians. Don't you think it's only fair that we share a bit about how we Earthlings do things? Before the professor could respond, the classroom erupted into a chorus of alien voices, each clamoring to express their agreement. Even the usually stoic Voidwalker was pulsing with excitement, its dark matter form casting dancing shadows on the walls. Professor Zorblax's compound eyes swiveled, taking in the enthusiasm of his students. It was, he had to admit, unlike anything he'd seen in his centuries of teaching. With a resigned wobble of his gelatinous form, he made a decision. Very well, Miss Smith, you may continue your presentation. But I expect a full report on how this relates to our standard curriculum to be on my desk no later than next solar cycle. Jenny's grin threatened to split her face. You got it, Prof. Now, where were we? Oh, right. Let me tell you guys about the time my cat figured out how to open the fridge. As Jenny launched into another tale, the alien students leaned in, utterly captivated. Even those species that reproduced by budding or existed as pure energy found themselves drawn into the strange, wonderful world of human-animal relationships. So there I was, Jenny was saying, her hands gesticulating wildly, sound asleep at 3 a.m., when I hear this weird noise from the kitchen. I creep downstairs, thinking it might be a burglar, and what do I see? My cat, Whiskers, with his head stuck in the milk carton. The class erupted in laughter. Well, in their species equivalent of laughter. Big Gloopy vibrated so hard he nearly liquefied. The hive mind biztoids emitted a high-pitched buzz that made everyone's teeth or tooth equivalents rattle, and the Voidwalker's chuckles caused a brief fluctuation in the local gravity. But here's the kicker, Jenny continued, wiping tears of mirth from her eyes. When he saw me, he didn't even look guilty. He just meowed at me like, hey, while you're here, could you open the tuna? As the laughter died down, Silith raised a trembling leaf. Ms. Jenny, I have a question. Shoot, Zilith Jenny said encouragingly. You've told us so many stories about these cats and dogs. Are there other kinds of pets on Earth? Jenny's eyes lit up. Oh boy, are there ever. Let's see, we've got birds, fish, rabbits, hamsters, guinea pigs, ferrets, reptiles like snakes and lizards, and even some insects like ants and beetles. The classroom buzzed with excitement. Each alien seemed to find a different Earth pet fascinating. Tell us more about these birds, chirped the avian student, ruffling its iridescent feathers. Ooh, and the water-dwelling creatures burbled Gloopy. Insects as companions. Intriguing, clicked the hive mind beastoids in unison. Jenny held up her hands, laughing. Whoa, one at a time. Okay, let's start with birds. They're amazing creatures. They can fly, Many of them can mimic human speech, and some are incredibly intelligent. She pulled up a hologram of a colorful parrot. This is a parrot. They're one of the smartest bird species we keep as pets. Some of them have the intelligence of a human toddler. The avian student's eyes widened, which, given they took up most of its face, was quite a sight. They possess flight and intelligence. Fascinating. Yep, Jenny nodded. And they can live for a really long time too. Some parrots can live up to 50 years or more. But why would humans want a pet that lives so long, rumbled Rocky, the rock-like student? Wouldn't it be inconvenient? Jenny's smile softened. That's a good question, Rocky. For some people, having a pet that can be a lifelong companion is exactly what they want. It's not about convenience, it's about forming a deep, lasting bond. She turned to Gloopy, who was still quivering with excitement. Now, for aquatic pets, we've got all sorts. Fish are probably the most common. They come in all sorts of colors and sizes, from tiny guppies to big, elegant koi. Gloopy's gelatinous form rippled with interest. And humans keep these water dwellers in their homes? How? We use things called aquariums, Jenny explained. They're like mini oceans or lakes that we set up in our houses. We fill them with water, plants, and decorations to make the fish feel at home. The Void Walker, which had been quietly observing, suddenly spoke up. Its voice sounded like whispers from the depths of space. These aquariums, they are like contained universes for these creatures. Jenny blinked, taken aback by the cosmic perspective. I guess you could look at it that way, yeah. Never thought of it like that before. The Void Walker pulsed with satisfaction, pleased to have contributed to the discussion. Now, for you guys, Jenny said, turning to the hive mind beastoids, you might find ant farms interesting. They're colonies of ants that humans keep in clear containers so we can watch them build their tunnels and go about their lives. The beastoids buzzed excitedly, their collective consciousness clearly intrigued by the idea of observing another hive-minded species. As Jenny continued to describe various earth pets, from the scales of reptiles to the soft fur of rabbits, she couldn't help but notice how each alien seemed to gravitate towards pets that shared characteristics with their own species. The avian was fascinated by birds, Gloopy couldn't get enough of aquatic pets, and the beastoids were buzzing non-stop about insect companions. It was Professor Zorblax who pointed this out, his tentacles waving thoughtfully. Ms. Smith, I can't help but notice a pattern. It seems each species here is most interested in earth animals that share some similarities with them. What do you make of this? Jenny grinned. I think it's fantastic, Prof. It just goes to show that no matter how different we might seem, there's always something that can connect us. Maybe that's part of why humans love pets so much they bridge the gap between us and the animal world. The professor's skin rippled in what Jenny had come to recognize as the Zygonian equivalent of raising an eyebrow. An interesting hypothesis, Ms. Smith. Perhaps there's more to this pet phenomenon than I initially thought. Encouraged by the professor's interest, Jenny decided to dive deeper into the science behind human-pet relationships. You know, there's actually a lot of research back on Earth about the benefits of having pets. They've been shown to reduce stress, lower blood pressure, and even help with mental health issues like depression and anxiety. The Quantumite student, which had been flickering between realities throughout the lesson, suddenly solidified fully. Are you suggesting that these pets have healing properties? Its voice resonated with multiple harmonics, as if speaking from several dimensions at once. In a way, yeah, Jenny nodded enthusiastically. It's not magic or anything, it's got to do with the emotional bond we form with our pets and the way they encourage us to be more active and social. She pulled up a new hologram, this one showing a graph of human vital signs before and after interacting with a dog. See this? Just petting a dog can cause a measurable decrease in stress hormones and an increase in feel-good chemicals in our brains. The alien students leaned in, fascinated by the data. Even Professor Zorblax's tentacles were waving in excitement. Remarkable, he muttered. To think that interspecies interaction could have such a profound physiological effect. Jenny grinned. Oh, it gets better, Prof. There are specially trained therapy animals that visit hospitals and nursing homes to help patients feel better, and service animals, like the guide dogs I mentioned earlier, can dramatically improve the quality of life for people with disabilities. She swiped through more images: a cat curled up on the lap of an elderly person in a nursing home, a dog wearing a vest that said therapy dog being petted by children in a hospital, a monkey helping a paralyzed person reach for objects. The aliens were utterly captivated. Questions came rapid fire from all corners of the room. How do you train an animal to be a therapy pet? Can any species be a service animal? Do the animals enjoy this work? How do you communicate tasks to a creature that doesn't speak your language? Jenny held up her hands, laughing. Whoa, slow down. I'll try to answer as many as I can. First off, not every animal can be a therapy or service pet. It takes a special temperament and a lot of training. But yes, from what we can tell, most of these animals do seem to enjoy their work. They get lots of love and attention, which most pets thrive on. She paused, considering the last question. As for communication, that's where the real magic happens. Humans and animals learn to understand each other through body language, tone of voice, and lots of practice. It's like learning a whole new language, but one that's based on emotions and instincts rather than words. The hive mind beastoids buzzed with interest. This non-verbal communication. It sounds similar to our collective consciousness. Fascinating. Jenny nodded enthusiastically. You know, you're not far off. In fact, some scientists think that the bond between humans and their pets, especially dogs, is a kind of co-evolution. We've grown together, learned to read each other's signals. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Professor Zorblax, who had been quietly taking notes, quite a feat with tentacles, suddenly spoke up. Ms. Smith, you mentioned earlier that some humans keep, what did you call them? Ants, as pets. How does one form a bond with such a tiny creature? Jenny grinned. Ant farms. They're a bit different from other pets. It's more about observing and learning than forming an emotional bond. People who keep ant farms are usually fascinated by the ants' social structure, how they work together to build their colony. It's like having a tiny civilization in your home. The beastoids buzzed even louder at this, their excitement palpable. But Jenny continued, there are people who keep larger insects as pets too. Tarantulas, for example. Taran. What Zelith's leaves quivered in confusion. Tarantulas, they're big, hairy spiders, Jenny explained, pulling up a hologram of one. Some people find them creepy, but others think they're fascinating and even cute. The reaction in the classroom was mixed. Some students leaned in for a closer look, while others recoiled. Gloopy actually split into 3 smaller gloopies before managing to pull himself together again. Humans willingly cohabitate with such creatures. Professor Zorblax's voice was a mix of horror and awe. Jenny laughed. Yep, that's the thing about humans and pets, we're pretty diverse in our tastes. What one person finds scary, another might find adorable. It's all about personal preference. She swiped through more images: a man with a colorful parrot on his shoulder, a woman cradling a tiny sugar glider, a child gently petting a giant tortoise. The variety of animals we keep as pets is pretty amazing, Jenny said. And it's not just about the animals themselves, but about the relationships we form with them. Every pet-human bond is unique. Zilith's leaves perked up. Ms. Jenny, you've told us so much about human pets. But what about your pet? Do you have one? Jenny's face softened into a warm smile. I do, actually. Her name is Luna, and she's a cat. Want to see her? The classroom erupted in excited affirmatives. Even Professor Zorblax leaned forward, his tentacles waving with interest. Jenny pulled out her personal holoprojector and pulled up an image of a sleek black cat with bright green eyes. This is Luna. I've had her since she was a kitten. That's what we call baby cats. The alien students cooed, or their species equivalent of cooing, at the image. She's beautiful, Silith whispered, leaves reaching out as if to touch the hologram. She really is, Jenny agreed, her voice fond. And she's smart as a whip too. Watch this. She swiped to a video of Luna performing tricks sitting on command, giving a high five with her paw, even jumping through a small hoop. The class watched in amazement. Extraordinary, Professor Zorblax muttered. The level of interspecies cooperation is remarkable. Jenny beamed with pride. Luna's pretty special, but you know what? Every pet owner thinks their pet is the most amazing creature in the universe. And that's kind of the point. It's not about having the smartest or the most talented animal. It's about the bond you form, the love you share. She looked around the classroom, meeting each student's gaze or sensory apparatus. That's what I really want you all to understand about pets. They're not just animals we keep in our homes. They're family. They're friends. They're beings that we choose to share our lives with, even though they're different from us. And in return, they give us love, companionship, and a different perspective on the world. The classroom was silent, each student, and even Professor Zorblax absorbing Jenny's words. Finally, Gloopy spoke up, his voice bubbling with emotion. MS Jenny, do you think a human could ever love an alien the way they love their pets? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Jenny could feel the weight of every eye, stalk, and sensory organ on her. She took a deep breath. Gloopy, I don't just think it's possible. I know it is. Because in a way, that's what's happening right here, right now. And confused murmurs rippled through the classroom. Think about it, Jenny continued. Here I am, a human, light years from Earth, surrounded by species I never even knew existed a year ago. And you know what? I care about all of you. You're my classmates, my friends. You're different from me in almost every way, but that doesn't matter. We've formed bonds. We've learned from each other, we've grown together. She gestured around the room. That's what humanity's relationship with pets has taught us, that love and friendship don't care about species barriers. If we can love cats and dogs and birds and even tarantulas, why not Zorblex or Quantumites or Voidwalkers? The classroom erupted in excited chatter. The hive mind biztoids were buzzing so intensely they accidentally shorted out the lights. The Voidwalker was pulsing with such emotion it was warping spacetime slightly. Even Professor Zorblax's skin was glowing with a warm, pleased purple. MS. Smith, the professor said, his voice uncharacteristically soft, I believe you've given us all a great deal to think about. Perhaps there is more to learn from Earth than I had realized. Jenny nodded, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. Thanks, Prof. You know, I think there's a lot we could all learn from each other if we keep our minds and our hearts open. As the class bell rang, or rather, as the psychic resonance field that served as a class bell pulsed, the alien students began to file out, still chattering excitedly about everything they'd learned. Several paused to thank Jenny or to ask follow-up questions about Earth's animals. Watching them go, Jenny couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She'd come to this alien school to learn about the universe, but today she'd had the chance to share a bit of what made humanity special, their capacity for love, for forming bonds that transcended species barriers. It wasn't just a quirk of human nature, it was a strength, a superpower even. In a galaxy full of wonders, maybe this was humanity's greatest contribution, the reminder that love, in all its forms, was a universal language. As Jenny packed up her things, she found herself wondering what other amazing connections were waiting to be forged among the stars. The universe, it seemed, was full of possibilities. And thanks to one unorthodox xenobiology lesson, a classroom full of alien students was starting to see humanity and perhaps themselves in a whole new light. As Jenny left the classroom, she could have sworn she heard Professor Zorblax muttering to himself, perhaps I should look into acquiring a cat for purely academic purposes, of course. She grinned. Mission accomplished. The next day, as Jenny walked into the xenobiology classroom, she was met with an unusual sight. Professor Zorblax was at his desk, but instead of his usual stern demeanor, he looked frazzled. His tentacles were tangled, his usually immaculate exoskeleton was ruffled, and there was a strange yowling sound coming from under his desk. Prof, Jenny asked cautiously. Everything okay? Professor Zorblax looked up, his compound eyes blinking rapidly. MS Smith. Perhaps you can assist me. I seem to be having some difficulty with my new research subject. Jenny peered under the desk. There, batting at the professor's tentacles with tiny paws, was a small tabby kitten. She burst out laughing. Professor, did you get a cat? It's for purely academic purposes, he insisted, his skin flushing a deep purple. I simply wished to observe the human-feline bond firsthand. But this creature, it defies all logical behavior patterns. Jenny grinned, reaching down to scoop up the kitten. It immediately started purring in her arms. Welcome to the wonderful world of pet ownership, Prof. Lesson 1: Cats don't care about logic. As the rest of the class filed in, their eyes widened at the sight of the small, furry creature in Jenny's arms. Class Professor Zorblax announced, trying to regain his dignity, "Today we will be conducting a practical study of human-pet interactions. Ms. Smith, if you would be so kind as to assist." Jenny's grin threatened to split her face. "With pleasure, Professor." "All right, class, gather round. Let me introduce you to the ultimate test of interspecies communication, the art of the belly rub." As the alien students crowded around, tentatively reaching out to pet the purring kitten, Jenny couldn't help but feel like she was witnessing the start of something beautiful. One small step for a cat, one giant leap for intergalactic understanding.